Ancient Rome glowed with sunlight pouring through countless glass windows. This is a fact that appends our darkest images of the past. We are about to solve a technological mystery hidden in plain sight. How did an empire, centuries before the soaring stained glass of medieval cathedrals, produce window panes on an industrial scale? By the end of this story, you will understand the ingenious Roman breakthrough that brought light into the ancient world and quietly shaped our own. We will follow clues from dusty archaeological sites to modern glass-blowing studios, uncovering the clever process they perfected and then somehow lost. What does the story of a single pane of glass reveal about the true nature of Roman genius? Before glass, the Roman world was a world of walls. Think of the grand atrium of a wealthy domus, its central opening to the sky, letting in rain and cold as much as light. For privacy and warmth, rooms relied on heavy wooden shutters. Closed, they plunged the space into total darkness. Open, they offered no barrier to the elements. In more modest homes and public buildings, the solutions were equally imperfect. Some used thin sheets of cloth soaked in oil or wax, a dim and flammable filter for sunlight. The wealthiest might import large, fragile panels of translucent stone like alabaster or selenite. These stones, mined from places like Egypt, allowed a soft, milky glow to penetrate, but they were prohibitively expensive, terribly heavy, and shattered easily. They were luxuries, not building materials. The result was a universal architectural compromise. Interiors were either sealed and dark or open and exposed. Light and air were a package deal you could not separate. This shaped daily life profoundly. Work, reading, and social gatherings were often pushed into courtyards or porticos, tethered to the mercy of the weather and the sun's schedule. The very design of buildings was constrained by this need to capture fleeting daylight. The window, as we understand it, a transparent barrier that invites light in while keeping the world out, simply did not exist. It was an unsolved problem, a silent limit on comfort, industry, and architecture. The leap from this shadowy reality to a world filled with light would require not just a new material, but a completely new way of thinking about the boundary between inside and out. The story of Roman glass does not begin with windows at all. It begins with something far more intimate and far more colorful. For centuries, skilled artisans in the Eastern Mediterranean practiced a painstaking technique known as core forming. Picture a craftsman taking a lump of clay and shaping it around a metal rod. This clay core becomes the mold. He then rolls this core in a tray of crushed, colored glass fragments before reheating it in a furnace, causing the glass to melt and fuse into a thin, shimmering skin over the clay. Once cooled, the clay core is scraped out, leaving behind a delicate vessel. The result was a small perfume bottle or an ointment jar, swirling with vibrant blues and yellows. Each one was a unique treasure, a luxury item that spoke of distant trade and immense skill. This was glass as jewelry, as art, as a container for the rarest substances. At the same time, glass found another purpose, chopped into tiny cubes to create the dazzling mosaic tesserae that covered walls and floors. Yet both of these applications, the vessel and the tile, treated glass as a decorative solid, not as a transparent sheet. The material remained expensive, slow to produce, and utterly disconnected from architecture. That all changed with a single revolutionary invention, one that transformed glass from a craft into an industry. Sometime in the 1st century before the Common Era, in the workshops of the Syro-Palestinian coast, a nameless artisan made a breathtaking leap. Instead of forming glass around a solid core, they discovered they could gather a molten blob of glass on the end of a long, hollow iron pipe. By blowing gently into this pipe, they could inflate the glass like a bubble. With skillful turning, heating, and shaping, this bubble could be manipulated into almost any form. Glassblowing was born. The implications were staggering. Where a core-formed vessel might take a master a full day to create, a glassblower could produce dozens of bottles, bowls, and beakers in the same time. The cost of glass objects plummeted. For the first time in history, ordinary people could afford a glass cup. This explosion of production created a new problem, or rather, a new opportunity. What to do with all this glass? The answer began in the most extravagant homes of the Roman elite. In places like the villas of Pompeii, preserved in ash, we find the first tentative experiments. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of thick, small, and often greenish panes set into bronze or wooden frames. These were not the clear, large windows we know. They were crude, uneven, and full of bubbles and distortions, but they were intentional. Someone had taken this newly abundant material and asked a radical question. What if we used it not to hold something, but to see through something? What if we used it to make a wall that light could pass through? This was the fragile, expensive birth of the window pane, a luxury toy for the richest of the rich, hidden away in private gardens and bathhouses. The spark had been struck, but the fire was not yet lit. How do you take this expensive novelty and turn it into a standard feature of an entire civilization? The Romans would need another, even more clever innovation. The answer lay not in blowing glass, but in casting it. Imagine a table of wet, fine sand, its surface perfectly smoothed and leveled. A Roman craftsman would pour a ladle of glowing, honey-thick molten glass directly onto this sandy bed, letting it flow and settle into a shallow pool. Alternatively, they might use a flat, open mold lined with sand. This was not a delicate art. It was a straightforward, almost industrial process, the logical next step from pouring molten bronze. As the glass cooled, it hardened into a solid, flat slab. These slabs were the first true sheets of window glass, known today as cast glass, or more descriptively, as window cakes. The name fits. They were dense, often several centimeters thick, and their surface was anything but perfect. Trapped within were countless tiny air bubbles, frozen like stars in an amber sky. The thickness varied from one edge to another, creating subtle waves and distortions, and almost always the glass carried a distinct greenish or bluish tint. This color was not a choice but a fingerprint. It came from tiny amounts of iron, a natural impurity in the sand used to make the glass. Every pane whispered of its earthy origins. To make these rough cakes usable, they underwent a lengthy finishing process. Workers would grind the surfaces with abrasives like sand and emery, slowly polishing away the worst irregularities to create a smoother, more translucent finish. But they could only do so much. The result was a pane that was small, perhaps no larger than a modern dinner tray, incredibly heavy and still full of visual character. Light passing through it would be softened, diffused, and tinted with that gentle aquatic hue. These were not windows for viewing the world clearly. They were windows for bathing a room in a serene, ethereal glow. And their cost in labor and material was still very high. Cast glass brought light into the baths of Pompeii and the grand villas of Rome, but it remained a statement of extreme wealth. The dream of a truly transparent, affordable window pane, one that could become commonplace, required a second, even more elegant revolution. The solution was not found on a casting table, but at the end of a glass blower's pipe. The real game changer arrived with a method so ingenious it feels almost modern. It is called the cylinder-blown process, and it transformed window glass from a luxury into a practical reality. Picture a master glass blower, not making a bottle, but creating something entirely new. They would gather a massive, glowing gob of molten glass onto their blowpipe. With a deep breath and a skilled, steady hand, they would blow not a round bubble, but a long, elongated cylinder. They might swing the pipe gently or let gravity help, stretching the glass into a thick-walled tube, sometimes over a meter long. Once this giant glass sausage had cooled and hardened, the next step was pure cleverness. A worker would use a hot iron or a diamond-tipped tool to slice off the sealed ends of the cylinder. Then, with one precise cut down its entire length, they would split the cylinder open like unrolling a parchment. This curved sheet of glass was then placed inside a special flattening kiln. As the heat softened the glass again, it would slowly slump and settle onto a flat ceramic slab, smoothing out into a large, rectangular pane. The contrast with the old cast glass was dramatic. Where a cast window cake was small, thick, and bubbly, a cylinder-blown sheet could be remarkably large, thin, and uniform. It was lighter, clearer, and could be produced with far greater consistency. This method, perfected in the 1st century AD, is the true heart of the Roman window glass mystery. It was a manufacturing triumph, a perfect marriage of the glass blower's art and an engineer's practicality. With this technique, the Romans finally had a way to produce quality window glass at a scale that could supply an empire. But why did this brilliant innovation, once so widespread, vanish from history for centuries? That cylinder, glowing from within like captured sunlight, was the key to the entire operation. To truly appreciate the genius, we need to watch the process unfold step by step. Our journey begins at the furnace mouth, a roaring heart of heat. The glass blower or vitrarius would dip the end of his long iron blowpipe into a clay pot full of molten glass, gathering a viscous orange hot gather. This was not a small amount, it was a massive blob weighing several kilograms. He would then roll this gather on a flat stone slab called a marver, shaping it into a symmetrical mass before raising the pipe to his lips. The first breath was crucial, inflating the glass into a thick-walled bubble, but here the technique diverged from making a bottle. Instead of blowing a perfect sphere, the artisan would begin to swing the pipe, gently at first, then with more force, letting gravity pull the molten glass downward. Through a combination of skilled blowing, swinging, and occasional reheating in the furnace, that bubble would stretch into a long, bulbous cylinder, sometimes over a meter in length. It was a dance of fire, air, and motion, requiring immense strength and a perfect feel for the material's behavior as it cooled from a liquid to a malleable solid. Once the cylinder had cooled and hardened completely, the delicate work of transformation began. A worker would use a hot iron rod to touch the sealed ends, causing them to crack off cleanly. Now they had a hollow glass tube. The next move was an act of precision. Using a sharp diamond or an iron tool, they would score a single, continuous line down the entire length of the cylinder. A careful application of heat along that score line, or sometimes just gentle pressure, would cause the cylinder to split open with a quiet crack, uncurling into a single, long, slightly curved sheet. This was the moment of revelation, the glass finally becoming a pane, but it was still curved. The final and perhaps most critical stage was the flattening kiln. This was a special low-temperature oven. The curved sheet was placed interior side down onto a large, flat ceramic plate inside the kiln. As the heat gently softened the glass again, it would slowly relax, its own weight causing it to sag and settle perfectly flat against the ceramic surface. This process, called annealing, also relieved internal stresses, making the pane less likely to shatter from temperature changes. Once cooled, the result was a large, rectangular sheet of glass, remarkably uniform and thin. It could be cut with a hot iron into smaller panes to fit any window frame. For the first time, architects had a reliable, scalable source of semi-transparent building material. They could now design rooms deep within a building that still received soft, diffused light. Bathhouses could maintain steam and warmth without darkness. Even shop fronts could use larger windows to display goods. The cylinder method did not just make windows, it changed the very idea of what a building could be. That thin, flattened sheet of glass was now a tangible object, but its journey was only half complete. To become a window, it needed a home. The transition from workshop to wall reveals a practical, almost modular approach to architecture that feels surprisingly familiar. At grand sites like Britain's Fishbourne Roman Palace, archaeologists have uncovered the silent evidence, window frames carved directly into blocks of local stone. These are not mere holes in a wall, they are precisely crafted recesses with a narrow groove or ribate cut around the inner edge. This groove was the secret. Into this channel, a worker would press a soft, sticky mortar, likely a mix of lime and sand. Then they would carefully set the glass pane into place, bedding it into this putty-like sealant. The mortar would harden over days, gripping the glass securely while also creating a waterproof seal against the elements. In less permanent or expensive structures, sturdy wooden frames served the same purpose, fitted into the wall opening and sealed with the same lime-based putty. This simple, effective glazing technique meant a pane could be installed quickly and, if necessary, replaced without dismantling the entire wall. But the Romans did not think in terms of single, vast picture windows. Their aesthetic and structural logic favored the grid. A large window opening would be divided by vertical and horizontal stone or wooden bars, called mullions and transoms, creating a lattice of smaller, more manageable panes. This grid pattern served multiple brilliant purposes. Structurally, it supported the wall above the opening, preventing collapse. Practically, it allowed the use of many smaller, cheaper, and stronger panes of glass instead of one impossibly large, fragile sheet. And visually, it created a rhythmic play of light and shadow, a characteristic look that still defines classical architecture today. Some of these windows were fixed, permanent features bathing a room in light. Others were ingeniously hinged, allowing a section of the grid to swing inward or outward, becoming a primitive casement window for ventilation. You can almost hear the soft creak of wood and the click of a bronze latch. The final effect transformed architecture. Light no longer entered a room as a single glaring shaft. Instead, it filtered through this grid of panes, each one softening and tinting the sunlight with its gentle greenish hue. The interior space became a living canvas of dappled aquatic light, shifting through the hours. A Roman room was no longer a dark cave or a wind-swept portico. It was a sheltered, luminous environment. This was the quiet triumph of their system, not just the invention of glass, but its seamless integration into the very fabric of daily life. The proof of this quiet revolution is scattered in fragments across the map of the empire. To find it, you must train your eye to see not just grand structures, but the small, broken pieces they left behind. In the ash-sealed rooms of Pompeii and Herculaneum, the story begins with luxury. Here in the villas of the wealthy, archaeologists have found thick, greenish cast glass panes still set in bronze frames, often in private bath suites or gardens. These early windows were status symbols, a dazzling novelty that filtered the fierce Italian sun into a cool, private glow. But the technology did not stay in Italy. Follow the legions north and west, and you will find the same innovation serving a completely different purpose. At Vindolanda, the remote fort on the northern frontier of Hadrian's Wall in Britain, the evidence is more humble but just as telling. Excavations have uncovered piles of glass cullet, the broken scraps and offcuts from glazing projects. This is not the trash of luxury, it is the debris of routine maintenance. It tells us that even here, at the edge of the known world, Roman commanders expected the comfort of glazed windows in their headquarters and bathhouses. The presence of this cullet, along with the distinctive H-shaped lead cames used to hold small panes together, proves that local craftsmen were cutting and installing glass on site. It was a standardized supply, part of the military's kit. This pattern repeats from the damp forests of Germany to the deserts of North Africa. In every major bath complex from Trier to Leptis Magna, the window was not an optional extra, it was an essential component of the engineering. Baths needed to trap heat and steam while admitting light, and glass was the perfect solution. The grandest provincial statement, however, might be Fishbourne Palace in southern Britain. Built in the 1st century AD, its audience chambers and gardens were lit by hundreds of panes set into those finely crafted stone frames we discussed. The scale is breathtaking. This was not a tentative experiment, it was a full-throated declaration of Roman culture with light as a central pillar. The distribution trail of these fragments and fittings paints a clear picture. The knowledge of how to make and install window glass spread from the workshops of Italy to the provinces with astonishing speed, carried by the army, by traders, and by the movement of skilled artisans. Wherever Roman comfort was established, glass followed. This was not a technology that trickled down slowly over centuries. It was a fundamental part of the Roman package, as integral to their idea of civilized space as underfloor heating or straight roads. The sheer volume of broken glass found from Britain to Syria tells us one thing unmistakably: this was not a rare luxury by the height of the empire. It was a common, everyday material, but if it was so common, so brilliantly engineered, and so deeply embedded in daily life, a final haunting question remains. Why did it all just disappear? The story of Roman glass is not one of palaces alone. Its true significance is written in the mortar of far more ordinary places. Consider the standard barrack block at a fort like Vindolanda on the cold, wind-swept frontier of Britain. Here, common legionaries slept and lived. Excavations have revealed that the windows of their barracks, and certainly the commanding officer's house and the hospital, were fitted with glass. This was not a luxury, it was a calculated provision. The Roman military was a vast, efficient machine that understood morale and health were strategic assets. Glazing a hospital window meant maintaining a warmer, cleaner environment for recovering soldiers. Glazing the barracks, even if only in certain rooms, meant a drier, brighter space during the long northern winters. It was a practical investment in the fighting efficiency of the empire itself. This pattern repeats across the provinces, from the Rhine to the Danube. Where the army built permanent stone forts, window glass followed as part of the standard architectural kit. The most compelling evidence for widespread use, however, comes from the heart of public life, the bathhouse. From the grandest imperial thermae in Rome to the modest military bath at a remote outpost, glass windows were not an optional feature, they were an operational necessity. Baths function on a delicate balance of heat and steam. Large unglazed openings would have let all the precious warmth escape, making the hypocaust heating system wildly inefficient. Glass provided the perfect solution, allowing daylight to illuminate the vaulted chambers while sealing in the heat. Every citizen, from the senator to the soldier to the freedman, expected this comfort as part of the bathing ritual. The presence of window glass in every public bath complex across the empire signals that its benefits were considered a public good, a shared technology that served the community's well-being. But did this technology trickle down into private middle-class life? The answer may lie in the ruins of Ostia, the port city of Rome. Here, multi-story brick apartment blocks called insulae housed shopkeepers, sailors, and clerks. While the ground floor shops often had open fronts, the living quarters above presented a different story. Archaeologists have found socket holes and recesses in upper story walls that strongly suggest the presence of wooden window frames. While the fragile glass panes themselves rarely survive in such contexts, the discovery of glassworking debris and cut pane fragments in these neighborhoods is telling. It suggests glaziers were operating locally, serving a clientele beyond the ultra-wealthy. For a shopkeeper living above his store, a single glazed window in the main living room would have transformed the space, making it a brighter, more weatherproof home for his family. It would have been a significant but not impossible expense, perhaps akin to a major appliance purchase today. This scattered evidence paints a new picture. Window glass in ancient Rome existed on a spectrum. At one end were the vast grid-like windows of villas and palaces, a statement of opulence. But at the other end were the functional single-pane windows of a barracks infirmary, a bakery's upstairs room, or a bathhouse's hot room. Its presence in these spaces tells us that the cylinder-blown process had achieved something remarkable. It had brought the cost down to a point where the material could be deployed for practical reasons, not just decorative ones. The Roman standard of comfort, that idea of a warm, light-filled interior space, had begun to democratize. It was no longer the sole property of the elite, but an achievable ideal for a soldier, a merchant, and perhaps even a prosperous artisan. The economics of mass production had made light itself a more common commodity, yet this very success makes the next part of the story so perplexing. If this technology was so useful, so widespread, and so deeply woven into the fabric of Roman life, how could it simply unravel and vanish? The answer lies not in a single cataclysm, but in a slow, silent fragmentation of the world that made it possible. But to truly understand the resilience of these ancient panes, we must look at their very substance. The durability of Roman window glass is not an accident of time. It is baked into its recipe. At its heart are three simple ingredients, combined with the precision of a master baker. The primary component was silica, the essential building block of all glass. The Romans sourced this from exceptionally pure sand, often from specific beaches like those near the river Belus in modern-day Lebanon. This sand was prized for its high quartz content and low levels of certain impurities. To this sand they added a flux, a substance that dramatically lowers the melting temperature. Their flux of choice was natron, a naturally occurring mixture of sodium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate mined from the dry lake beds of Egypt. Natron acted like a chemical key, allowing the stubborn silica to melt in their wood-fired furnaces at temperatures they could actually achieve. The third and perhaps most crucial ingredient was lime, usually introduced unintentionally as an impurity in the sand or from the crushed seashells sometimes added. Lime or calcium oxide is the stabilizer. Without it, glass is water-soluble, a condition called glass disease where moisture in the air slowly leaches the soda out, leaving a crumbly, iridescent crust. The Roman recipe, by happy geological accident, almost always contained enough lime to create a stable, long-lasting material. This is the core reason why so many fragments survive in the ground today, still solid after 2,000 years. The beautiful imperfections tell another story. That distinctive green or blue tint we see in so many panes is the fingerprint of iron. Tiny amounts of ferrous and ferric oxides in the sand, impurities the Romans could not remove, are responsible for that aquatic hue. In some glasses, a deliberate addition of manganese could counteract the green, creating a clearer, more colorless glass that was a premium product. Modern scientists use tools like X-ray fluorescence to perform a kind of atomic archaeology on these shards. By analyzing the precise chemical signature, the unique mix of trace elements like strontium and zirconium, they can often pinpoint the exact beach where the original sand was gathered. This tells a story of vast, organized trade networks where raw materials from Egypt and the Levant were shipped to glass houses across the empire to be transformed into a common pane of light. The glass itself is a map of Roman industry, frozen in a translucent, enduring form. The beauty of a Roman window was never in its clarity, but in its character. Each pane was a unique piece of sky colored by the earth itself. That common greenish hue came from iron, a natural guest in the sand, but the palette was far richer. By adding specific metal oxides to the molten mix, artisans could work a kind of alchemy. Cobalt created deep celestial blues, manganese could yield soft amethyst purples. Antimony or lead produced a sunny, honeyed yellow. These colors were not flaws, they were features, transforming a functional pane into a subtle element of decor. In the most luxurious settings, they took this artistry even further. Craftsmen developed techniques to create marbled glass, where strands of colored glass were twisted into the gather, resulting in panes swirled with white and blue like polished stone. Another method produced ribbed glass, where the hot sheet was pressed against a patterned mold, giving its surface a textured, corrugated finish that would scatter light in fascinating patterns across a wall. These were windows designed to be looked at as much as looked through, but the most universal quality of all was its translucency. Perfectly transparent glass, like the invisible pane in a modern window, was exceptionally rare and difficult to achieve. The Roman standard was a material that softened and scattered light. Sunlight entering a room did not arrive as a sharp beam, but as a gentle, diffused radiance. It filled the space with a luminous, aquatic glow, muting harsh shadows and bathing everything in that serene, greenish or bluish tint. This created an ambient quality we have largely lost, a quality of light that felt organic and calming. A Roman interior was not illuminated, it was permeated by light. The window pane acted less like an open portal and more like a luminous veil, separating the occupant from the world outside while still connecting them to the sky. This aesthetic choice had a profound effect on daily life and art. It meant the quality of light indoors changed with the hour and the weather in the most beautiful way, from the cool, blue-tinged glow of a cloudy morning to the warm, honeyed gold of a late afternoon. It was a technology that did not seek to conquer nature, but to collaborate with it, framing the sun's passage in a soft, enduring embrace. This diffusion of light redefined the very shape of Roman buildings. With a reliable supply of large panes, architects could now design openings that were not just holes in a wall, but deliberate instruments for illumination. This allowed for one of their most majestic innovations, the clerestory. Picture the vast interior of a Roman basilica, a soaring public hall used for law and commerce. Its central nave rose high above the surrounding aisles, and along the upper walls, just below the ceiling, ran a continuous band of windows. These clerestory windows, filled with dozens of cylinder-blown panes, flooded the immense central space with a soft, heavenly light from above, leaving the lower aisles in a more intimate shadow. It was an architectural symphony of light and volume, impossible without the technology to glaze such high, inaccessible openings. The same principle transformed the great imperial bath complexes. The massive vaulted ceilings of the caldarium or hot room were often pierced with round or arched windows. Sunlight would stream through these panes, cutting through the steam to illuminate the marble walls and painted ceilings, creating a dramatic, almost sacred atmosphere of heat and light. Glass made these monumental interiors feel airy and divine, rather than dark and cavernous. On a human scale, the impact was just as profound. A glazed window extended the useful day. Before, intricate work like reading, writing, or detailed craftsmanship was largely confined to daylight hours and often to outdoor porticos. Now a scholar in his study or a matron in her sitting room could work comfortably indoors well into the afternoon, shielded from wind and weather by a transparent barrier. The light was softer and more diffused than direct sun, easier on the eyes for reading scrolls or weaving. In the bathhouses, the benefits were both practical and psychological. Sunlight pouring through the windows of the frigidarium or the exercise yard did more than just brighten the space. It acted as a natural disinfectant. While the Romans knew nothing of germs, they deeply understood the health-giving properties of sunlight and fresh air. A sunlit bath was a clean bath, and the psychological lift of bathing in a radiant, glass-enclosed space was central to the Roman idea of wellness. Perhaps the most subtle change was in the relationship between inside and out. In the seaside villas of the elite, large windows were strategically placed to frame a view like a living painting. A dining room might have a wall of panes looking over a manicured garden or the sparkling Mediterranean. The window became a picture frame, and the garden beyond became an extension of the interior decor. This was a new way of experiencing nature, not from an open doorway where you were exposed to it, but from a position of sheltered comfort, observing the world through a luminous, quiet veil. It created a contemplative distance, allowing beauty to be appreciated without intrusion. The Roman window did not just let light in, it fundamentally altered the rhythm of work, the practice of health, and the very aesthetic of leisure, turning the interior into a sanctuary that was both connected to the world and gracefully separate from it. That luminous veil did more than just frame a beautiful view. It acted as a silent, steadfast guardian against the chaos of the outside world. In the northern provinces of the empire, places like Britain and Germania, the climate was not a gentle Mediterranean ideal. Winters brought biting cold and relentless damp. A building with open shutters or cloth coverings was at the mercy of these elements, its interior air chilled by every gust. The installation of a glass pane changed this equation fundamentally. While not a perfect insulator by modern standards, that solid sheet of material created a still air barrier. It trapped a thin layer of immobile air against its surface, which dramatically slowed the transfer of heat from the inside out. The difference in a room's ambient temperature would have been immediately noticeable, a shift from a drafty, inhospitable space to one that retained the warmth from hypocaust systems or braziers far more effectively. This wasn't just about comfort, it was about health and habitation. It made life in colder climates sustainable at a higher standard, allowing Roman customs of dress and indoor activity to persist far from the sunny Italian peninsula. The barrier worked in both directions. That same pane that held warmth in also kept a multitude of intrusions out. In the bustling, unpaved streets of a Roman town, dust was a constant fact of life. A gust of wind could turn an open window into a delivery system for a fine layer of grit over every surface, from dining couches to scrolls. A closed glass window eliminated this. It maintained a visual and environmental connection to the outside while providing a sealed defense. Insects, too, were thwarted. In an era before screens, mosquitoes and flies were more than a nuisance. They were vectors of disease. A glazed opening in a bedroom or a hospital ward provided a significant passive layer of protection, allowing for ventilation through other means while keeping pests at bay. Perhaps one of the most underappreciated benefits was the control of sound. Roman cities were famously loud, filled with the clatter of carts on stone, the cries of street vendors, and the general din of crowded urban life. The thick, small-paned windows set deeply into their stone frames and sealed with mortar would have dampened this cacophony considerably. They turned a raucous street scene into a muted backdrop, allowing for conversation, study, or rest without constant interruption. This creation of a controlled, quiet interior was a profound psychological luxury. It established a clear boundary between the public tumult and private refuge, a concept of home that feels remarkably modern. Together, these functions reveal the window pane as an ancient environmental control system. It was a tool for managing climate, cleanliness, and auditory space. This was a monumental leap in living standards. For the first time, architecture could promise not just shelter, but a curated interior environment. You could have light without wind, a view without dust, and fresh air without the accompanying noise of the world. This ability to selectively filter experience, to invite in the benefits of the outside while excluding its hardships, represents one of the quietest yet most revolutionary advances in the entire story of Roman technology. It redefined comfort from a fleeting moment by a fire to a sustained, built condition. Behind every pane of glass was an economic engine of staggering scale. To supply an empire with light required not just a clever technique, but a fully realized industry, a complex web of extraction, production, and trade that stretched from the deserts of Egypt to the forests of Gaul. The heart of this system was the workshop, the officina vitrea. These were not small artisan sheds, but substantial, soot-stained industrial operations. Their location was dictated by two voracious needs: fuel and raw materials. You would typically find them on the outskirts of towns, nestled near dense forests to provide a constant supply of wood for their roaring furnaces, and close to a river or major road for transportation. A single workshop might house multiple furnaces, each with its own team of specialists. There were the gatherers who collected the molten glass, the master blowers who formed the cylinders, the cutters who split them open, and the kiln masters who managed the delicate flattening process. It was hot, grueling, and highly skilled work, but it was also standardized, a production line for light. The raw materials themselves tell a story of globalized trade long before the word existed. The pure silica sand, the foundation of the glass, was often shipped from specific, celebrated sources like the river Belus in the Levant, but the most crucial ingredient came from across the sea. Natron, the salt that made the sand melt at a workable temperature, was mined almost exclusively from the dry lake beds of the Wadi Natron in Egypt. This substance was so vital that it was shipped in vast quantities in amphorae, a steady flow of white powder traveling from Alexandria to ports like Pozzuoli in Italy, and then upriver to inland workshops. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of a specialized chemical supply chain, the indispensable catalyst for an entire industry. Once the panes were made, another network sprang to life. Finished window glass, carefully packed in straw or wooden crates, would be loaded onto carts and barges. It traveled along Roman roads and waterways to construction sites in growing provincial cities, to military quartermasters at frontier forts, and to private vendors in urban markets. This demand created a cascade of specialized professions. Beyond the glassblower, there was the glazier who cut the panes and set them in their frames, the carpenter or stone mason who crafted the latticework casements, and the teamsters and boatmen who moved everything. A single window installed in a bathhouse in Roman London represented the labor of miners in Egypt, shippers on the Mediterranean, furnace tenders in Gaul, and a local installer on a ladder in the British Rhine. It was a sector of the economy that literally did not exist before the 1st century, born entirely from the desire for a brighter, more comfortable interior. This was not a luxury trade operating at the margins. It was a robust, integrated industry responding to a mass demand created by Roman architecture itself. The empire did not just invent window glass, it built the first system to manufacture and distribute light on an imperial scale. Yet this brilliant system, this empire of light, did not last forever. The great mystery begins not with a bang, but with a slow, pervasive dimming. After the political collapse of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century, the widespread use of quality window glass in Europe faded like a setting sun. The evidence is written in the dirt, a dramatic drop in glass fragments found at post-Roman sites. So what happened? Why did this transformative technology, so deeply embedded in daily life, recede into near oblivion for centuries? The answer is not one single catastrophe, but a perfect storm of unraveling threads. First, the long-distance trade networks that fueled the industry disintegrated. Recall that crucial ingredient, natron, which came only from the distant Egyptian deserts, with the western provinces fragmenting into smaller kingdoms and Mediterranean shipping lanes disrupted by conflict and shifting powers. That steady flow of white salt simply stopped. You cannot make stable glass without a flux, and local alternatives like wood ash produced an inferior, often cloudy product. The specialized knowledge itself began to evaporate. Glassblowing, especially the complex cylinder method for windows, was a high-skilled craft passed down in organized workshops. As the urban economies that supported these workshops contracted, masters had fewer apprentices, and the precise techniques for creating large, flat panes were gradually forgotten. Architectural needs also shifted profoundly. In an age of instability and localized warfare, the priority was not on sunny bathhouses or airy basilicas, but on fortified walls and defensible keeps. The great architectural projects of the early Middle Ages were monasteries and castles, structures where small, high openings were a security feature, not a design flaw. The economic reality sealed the fate. Without mass production, glass became extravagantly expensive again, a luxury reserved for the stained glass of cathedral windows centuries later, not for the window of a common house. Yet this story of loss has a striking counterpoint. In the Eastern Roman Empire, centered on Constantinople, the tradition never died. Here, the Roman state, trade routes, and urban culture remained largely intact. Byzantine craftsmen continued to make and use window glass, employing it in their magnificent churches and palaces for another 1,000 years. This stark geographical divide highlights a profound truth. The Roman window was not a standalone invention. It was the product of a specific world, a world of peace, integrated trade, specialized labor, and a shared desire for civilized comfort. When that world fractured, the knowledge didn't just walk away. It was a light that required an entire civilization to keep it burning. While the light dimmed in the west, it never went out. In the east, in the gilded city of Constantinople, the Roman Empire lived on for another 1,000 years, and with it, the art of the window. Here, the complex dance of the cylinder-blown pane never ceased. Byzantine craftsmen, the direct heirs to Roman technical knowledge, maintained the full chain of production, from gathering Egyptian natron to operating the flattening kilns. Their workshops supplied a civilization that still prized luminous, sacred interiors. The proof gleams in the great churches like Hagia Sophia, consecrated in the year 537. Though its original windows are gone, their precise stone frames remain, designed to hold countless panes of glass that would have filled the vast dome with a shimmering, heavenly radiance. In palaces like the Great Palace of Constantinople, archaeologists have found fragments of thick, greenish glass alongside delicate, gilded tesserae, evidence that both mosaic walls and glass windows were part of a unified vision of splendor. This was not a frozen tradition, but a living one. Byzantine artisans experimented with colors and forms, creating not just flat panes, but also round, bottle-bottom pieces set into intricate latticework, casting patterned shadows like stone tracery. This enduring expertise created a vital technological bridge across the so-called Dark Ages. As the Islamic caliphates rose, absorbing former Byzantine provinces, they encountered these skilled glassworking communities. Byzantine masters may have even worked directly for new patrons, transferring their knowledge of soda lime glass recipes and forming techniques. This fusion laid the groundwork for the legendary brilliance of Islamic glass, from the enameled mosque lamps of Damascus to the delicate vessels of Persia. Centuries later, this knowledge would complete a long, circular journey back to Europe, through the trading hubs of Venice, which had strong ties to the Byzantine East, and through the cultural exchange of the Crusades. European craftsmen rediscovered the secrets of quality glass. The Venetian island of Murano became the new Constantinople, a center where techniques preserved in the East were refined and reborn. So the story of the Roman window does not truly end with collapse. It simply crossed a sea, burned brightly in a new empire, and waited for the West to rekindle its flame, a testament to the enduring power of a simple idea, that light itself is worth preserving. In the West, the fall of Rome ushered in a long twilight for the window pane. For centuries, the common experience of light retreated back toward a simpler, darker age. In the manor houses and early castles of early medieval Europe, the glazed window became a rarity, a ghost of a more organized world. The intricate supply chains for Egyptian natron had snapped. The specialized workshops that once produced cylinder-blown sheets by the hundred fell silent. What replaced the glass pane was a return to the ancient compromise, oiled cloth or parchment stretched across openings, or simple wooden shutters that sealed out the cold and sealed in the dark. A room was once again either open to the weather or closed to the light. The architectural ambition for luminous, climate-controlled interiors dimmed, replaced by the pressing needs of security and basic shelter. Fortification, not illumination, was the order of the day. Yet from this very darkness, a new and dazzling form of glass would eventually rise, not to light a home, but to elevate the soul. Centuries later, in the high medieval period, glass would make a triumphant return to architecture, but with a completely different mission. The great Gothic cathedrals began to soar, and with them came the art of stained glass. This was not a resurrection of the Roman ideal, it was a transformation. Stained glass was not about creating a transparent barrier to the outside world, it was about transforming that barrier into a sacred storybook. Craftsmen used small, intensely colored pieces of glass, held together by strips of lead, to create vast pictorial windows depicting biblical scenes and saints. Sunlight streaming through these windows did not simply illuminate the stone interior, it transformed the very air into a kaleidoscope of divine color, painting the floors and columns with ruby, sapphire, and gold. The technique itself was a departure, While Roman glassmakers sought size, clarity, and uniformity for practical light, medieval glaziers prized deep, saturated color and symbolic narrative. Their method was fundamentally one of assembly, piecing together a mosaic of small, often deeply tinted panes within a rigid lead framework. This was a glorious art form, but it served a religious and didactic purpose, teaching scripture through light and color to a largely illiterate congregation. It created an environment meant to feel separate from the mundane world outside, a heaven on earth. The common home, however, remained in the shadows. The stained glass window of the cathedral was a monumental, costly investment for the community, a spiritual luxury. It did not signal a return to everyday glazing. The Roman pursuit of architectural illumination for its own sake, for comfort, health, and the simple pleasure of a sunlit room, would lie dormant, a forgotten standard, waiting for another age to rediscover the value of a clear pane and a bright secular space. So how do we know all of this? The story of Roman windows is not written in ancient texts, but buried in the ground, waiting to be read by patient detectives. The primary evidence comes in the form of broken pieces, often overlooked in the glamour of treasure hunting. On an archaeological dig, tons of material are sifted, most of it pottery, animal bone, and building rubble. Among this refuse, a trained eye looks for a specific kind of fragment, one with a telltale curve. A shard from a Roman window pane, born from a blown cylinder, often retains a subtle uniform curvature, unlike the flat, chunky pieces from cast glass or the rounded sections from a bottle. These curved fragments are the first clue, but a shard alone is just a piece of a puzzle. The true breakthrough happens when these pieces are found in situ, Latin for in their original position. Discovering a fragment still lodged in the hardened lime mortar of a stone window frame is like finding a fingerprint at a crime scene. It provides irrefutable context, proving that this specific piece of glass was part of a specific window in a specific room. It tells archaeologists not just what the material was, but how it was used. At sites like Fishbourne Palace, finding these panes still in their elegant stone grids allowed researchers to reconstruct the exact size and pattern of the windows, turning abstract descriptions into a tangible view. Beyond the physical shape and location, scientists now use tools to interrogate the glass at a molecular level. Chemical analysis like mass spectrometry can detect the unique signature of elements in the glass, tracing the sand back to its source beach or confirming the use of Egyptian natron. This turns a simple green shard into a passport, stamped with the trade routes of the empire. But perhaps the most vivid form of discovery comes from experimental archaeology. Here, modern master glassblowers, using reconstructed Roman-style furnaces and tools, attempt to recreate the cylinder-blown process from start to finish. They quickly learn the immense skill required, the precise heat control needed to keep the giant cylinder from collapsing, the strength to swing and elongate it, and the delicate touch to score and open it without shattering the entire piece. These experiments are humbling. They reveal that what the Romans did routinely was an art form of the highest order, a blend of brute force and exquisite finesse. When a modern artisan finally succeeds in flattening a self-blown cylinder into a pane, they hold in their hands not just glass, but a direct conversation with an ancient craftsman. They feel the same challenges, the same margin for error, and the same triumphant satisfaction. This combination of field archaeology, laboratory science, and hands-on recreation allows us to assemble the story piece by curved piece. It transforms anonymous rubble into a biography of light, written by the people who learned to bottle the sun. The furnace roars back to life, not in an ancient workshop, but in a modern studio. This is experimental archaeology in action, a field where the best way to understand the past is to get your hands dirty, and in this case, very, very hot. Master glassblowers, armed with historical research rather than inherited tradition, are attempting to resurrect the lost art of the Roman cylinder pane. They build furnaces based on excavated designs, fueled by wood to replicate the inconsistent smoky heat a Roman vitrarius would have known. They gather their glass from a modern pot, but their tools are simple iron pipes and rods, little changed in 2 millennia. The goal is not to make a perfect pane, but to walk in the footsteps of the craft, to feel its challenges in their muscles and see its pitfalls with their own eyes. What they discover is a profound respect. The first major hurdle is the sheer physicality of the process. Gathering a blob of molten glass large enough to form a window cylinder is an act of endurance. The iron blowpipe, now bearing several kilograms of glowing, viscous material, becomes incredibly heavy and punishingly hot, even through protective wraps. The artisan must then begin the critical swing, using centrifugal force to stretch the gather into a cylinder. This is not a gentle motion. It requires immense upper body strength and precise control, a careful balance between letting gravity do its work and preventing the molten mass from tearing or collapsing under its own weight. One modern practitioner described it as trying to control a giant, superheated pendulum that is slowly solidifying. Every second counts as the glass cools from a pliable liquid to a leather-hard state. Then comes the breath. Blowing too hard or too fast creates a thin, weak bubble that will rupture. Blowing too softly fails to expand the glass adequately, resulting in a thick, useless lump. The craftsman must maintain a steady, even pressure while simultaneously rotating the pipe to keep the cylinder symmetrical, all while judging the temperature by the color of the glowing glass. It is a dizzying coordination of breath, motion, and intuition. The final test is the flattening. After the cylinder is scored and opened, laying that curved sheet onto the ceramic plate in the kiln seems straightforward. But if the temperature is off by even a small margin, the glass will not relax evenly. It might develop sharp creases, warp into a useless shape, or stick to the plate and shatter upon cooling. Modern experiments have produced panes riddled with these very failures, thick at one end and paper thin at the other, or frozen with deep ripples. Each flawed pane is a data point, a silent lesson in what could go wrong. These struggles illuminate the Roman achievement with stunning clarity. The consistency found in archaeological fragments suggests that Roman workshops had standardized this incredibly difficult process. They had developed an unspoken rhythm, a shared knowledge of exactly how long to swing, how deep a breath to take, and when to return the glass to the heat for a refire. This was not a happy accident, it was industrialized skill, the result of generations of masters training apprentices within a thriving, demanding market. Watching a modern artist with all our advantages struggle to replicate a single good pane makes you realize that every Roman window was a minor miracle of coordinated human effort. It was a product of an ecosystem that supported such extreme specialization, where a person could spend a lifetime perfecting the art of capturing light in a cylinder of breath and sand. Those modern experiments raise as many questions as they answer, revealing just how much we still do not know. Scholars debate the very methods used, piecing together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. One major controversy centers on an alternative technique, the crown or muff method. This involves blowing a large sphere of glass, then attaching a solid rod called a pontal to the opposite side, before cracking off the original blowpipe. The glassblower would then spin the rod rapidly, causing the hot glass sphere to flare outward into a large, flat disc by centrifugal force, like a pizza dough spun in the air. Was this method used in Rome? Some argue that certain large, circular panes with a distinctive bullseye pattern at their center, the pontal mark, point to this technique. Others counter that the evidence is thin and the cylinder method remains the dominant, proven technology. The debate highlights a key uncertainty: how standardized was production across the empire? Were there original variations, with workshops in Syria perfecting one technique while those in Gaul developed another? Every new archaeological discovery adds a twist. The recent unearthing of a suspected glass workshop in France, with its peculiar furnace layout and unusual glass waste, might suggest a localized adaptation we simply do not yet understand. Even the role of the flattening kiln is not fully settled. How hot did it need to be? How long did the glass slump? Was it a single slow cooling or a multi-stage process? A miscalculation would mean a warped, useless pane, a costly mistake in fuel and labor. And what of the practical benefits we so easily assume? Just how effective was that greenish pane as insulation? Modern thermal engineers can model it, but the real-world performance in a drafty Roman villa with a brazier burning in one corner is harder to quantify. Did it truly transform domestic comfort, or was its effect more psychological, a symbol of civilized separation from the elements? Each new find, like a crate of unused panes discovered in a shipwreck or a preserved glazier's toolkit, is a thrill. It feels like we are getting closer to the truth, but these discoveries rarely provide simple answers. Instead, they open new avenues of inquiry, showing us that the Roman glass industry was not a monolithic machine, but a vibrant, adaptive network of human ingenuity, full of local shortcuts, brilliant failures, and solutions we have yet to fully comprehend. The glass in your window today is a technological alien compared to its Roman ancestor. Modern float glass, the industry standard, is a marvel of automation and precision. Imagine a river of molten glass over 1,000 degrees Celsius poured continuously onto a bath of molten tin. The glass, being lighter, floats on this perfectly flat liquid metal surface, spreading out into a ribbon of flawless, uniform thickness. It cools slowly, emerging as a crystal clear sheet that can be hundreds of feet long, virtually free of bubbles or color and cut to any size. This process creates a material that is, for all practical purposes, invisible, a perfect barrier that disappears from our conscious thought. The Roman pane, by contrast, was small, thick, wavy, and tinted green. It was full of frozen bubbles and striations, a unique artifact of breath and hand. In terms of optical clarity, thermal efficiency, and sheer scale of production, there is no contest. The modern pane wins in every measurable category. But this comparison misses the monumental point. The Romans were not competing with our technology, they were inventing the very category. Their conceptual leap was not about achieving perfection, but about establishing a principle. They were the first civilization to systematically harness glass, not as a jewel or a vessel, but as an architectural material for everyday environmental control. They looked at a wall and saw not a limit, but a filter. They understood that a building could negotiate with the sun, could invite in light while rejecting wind, could create a curated interior climate. This idea that a transparent solid could be a standard component of a habitable space is the foundational bedrock upon which every subsequent window technology is built. From the leaded glass of medieval cathedrals to the double-glazed units in a skyscraper, every single one is a descendant of that first flawed, brilliant pane set into a mortar groove 2,000 years ago. The Roman achievement was not in making the best glass, but in realizing that glass itself could be a tool for shaping human experience, for turning shelter into a place filled with managed, beautiful light. That conceptual blueprint is their true, enduring legacy, one we live inside every single day. The true measure of an idea is not its immediate perfection, but the distance it travels. That Roman principle of a transparent environmental barrier has quietly shaped our world in places far beyond the ancient villa. Centuries after the last Roman furnace cooled, the concept re-emerged with a new purpose: cultivation. In the frosty gardens of European nobility, medieval and Renaissance gardeners built structures called orangeries to protect delicate citrus trees during winter. These were not dark sheds, they were light-filled rooms with large south-facing windows, designed to trap the sun's warmth and create a microclimate for exotic plants. The material was often oiled paper or thin sheets of mica at first, but the goal was pure Roman logic: admit maximum light while excluding the cold. By the 18th century, this evolved into the elaborate glass houses of Kew Gardens and Versailles. These soaring structures of iron and glass were technological marvels, but their core function was an ancient one, using a transparent shell to create a controlled interior climate, a bowl of summer in the midst of winter. This was the Roman window writ large, scaled up from a single room to an entire artificial ecosystem. The same principle then leapt from the garden to the city. The Industrial Revolution brought new materials, iron and steel, which could bear immense weight. Architects realized that if the walls no longer had to hold up the building, they could become mere skins. The result was the curtain wall, a non-structural facade of glass and metal that sheathes modern skyscrapers. From the Crystal Palace of 1851 to today's gleaming towers, the architectural philosophy is a direct descendant of that first pane in a Pompeian bathhouse: create a barrier that welcomes light and view while managing the interior environment through modern heating and cooling. Even the humblest suburban greenhouse where a gardener grows tomatoes operates on this 2,000-year-old blueprint, but the legacy extends beyond Earth's atmosphere. Consider the International Space Station. Its cupola, a giant windowed module, provides astronauts with a breathtaking view of our planet. Yet it is not just an observatory, it is an engineering marvel of transparency and containment. Multiple layers of ultra-strong glass must maintain a perfect seal against the deadly vacuum of space, admitting life-giving sunlight while shielding the crew from cosmic radiation and extreme temperature swings. This is the Roman idea pushed to its ultimate extreme, a transparent barrier as the only thing separating a habitable, climate-controlled interior from a hostile, alien outside. Every time we sit by a window to enjoy a view, we are participating in a Roman tradition. They were the first to consciously frame the outside world as a living painting, to design a building not just to look at, but to look from. That shift in perspective, from the wall as a boundary to the window as a curated connection, has influenced every architect who ever considered the relationship between a building and its site. So while the chemistry and manufacturing of our glass is light years ahead, the fundamental dream remains unchanged: to live in light on our own terms. This quiet story of glass and light forces us to reconsider a much larger question: what truly defined Roman genius? For too long, popular history has cast them as brilliant imitators, inheriting the philosophy and art of Greece and adding little but roads and armies. The saga of their window glass shatters that simplistic view. Here was an innovation born not from abstract thought, but from a profound practical desire to improve the very texture of daily existence. The Romans encountered a material, glass, used for centuries to make precious trinkets. They then mastered a new tool, the blowpipe, which revolutionized vessel production. But their pivotal leap was one of application. They looked at these two things and asked a revolutionary question: what if we used them not to hold perfume, but to hold back the wind? What if we used them to solve the ancient universal human struggle for a warm, bright, clean interior space? Their answer was not a singular masterpiece for a temple, but a scalable, repeatable manufacturing system. They engineered a process, the cylinder method, that could be taught, replicated, and shipped across continents. This was innovation with a purpose, directed squarely at enhancing ordinary life. It speaks to a mindset obsessed with utility, scale, and systemic improvement. They saw a problem of human comfort and deployed the full machinery of their empire, its trade networks, its specialized labor, its architectural ambition to solve it. This is a different kind of legacy, one less about marble statues and more about the quality of sunlight in a room. It reminds us that the most enduring revolutions are often the quietest, the ones that slip into the background of daily ritual until they become invisible. The next time you glance through a pane of glass, you are not just looking outside, you are looking through a 2,000-year-old idea, a testament to the practical ingenuity that sought, quite literally, to bring the ancient world out of the shadows. That final image of the astronaut's cupola brings our journey full circle. We began in a world of walls where light and air were inseparable, and we end in a world transformed by a simple, brilliant idea. The Roman path to that idea was a cascade of cleverness. It started with casting, pouring molten glass onto sand to create heavy, bubbly cakes that brought a soft, greenish glow into the baths of the wealthy. But the true revolution was the cylinder-blown method, a stroke of manufacturing genius that turned glass blowing into an industry for light. By blowing, splitting, and flattening long tubes of glass, they achieved something unprecedented, a way to produce large, uniform panes at a scale that could supply an empire. This was not a minor upgrade, it was a paradigm shift. It changed architecture, allowing for luminous clerestories and sunlit private rooms. It changed society, making light-filled spaces a feature of military forts and, gradually, more modest homes. And it powered a vast economy, from Egyptian natron mines to provincial glaziers, all humming to satisfy the demand for a brighter, more comfortable life. Yet this very success deepens the central mystery. A technology so embedded, so useful, did not simply evolve. It vanished from the West for centuries when the intricate system that supported it fragmented. Its knowledge survived only because it was carried east, preserved in the workshops of Constantinople, until Europe was ready to rediscover it. So what are we left with when we hold one of those bubbly, green-tinted fragments? We are holding more than ancient silica. We are holding a pane through which to see Roman genius in its truest form. It was not about philosophical abstraction or artistic perfection, but about pragmatic, systemic improvement of the everyday. They looked at a universal human problem, the dark, drafty interior, and they engineered a civilization-wide solution. That imperfect pane, with its frozen bubbles and gentle curve, is a testament to a civilization that believed daily comfort was a goal worthy of its greatest ingenuity. It was a light they built, enjoyed, and despite everything, managed to leave burning for us to find. That ancient green fragment connects your world to theirs. So the next time you pass a window, pause for just a second. Look at that clear pane not as a simple sheet of glass, but as the end point of a 2,000-year journey. See the ghost of a Roman cylinder in its flawless surface, and the echo of a Pompeian bathhouse in the light it lets pour in. That boundary between you and the weather is one of humanity's oldest and quietest victories. We would love to hear where you see this legacy alive today. Does a particular modern building, a sun-drenched atrium, or even a clever use of glass in your own home remind you of that Roman ingenuity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed uncovering this hidden layer of the past, please subscribe. We explore the forgotten technologies and unsolved mysteries of ancient civilizations, bringing their silent revolutions back into the light. Turn on notifications so our next journey into history finds you the moment it begins.